Good morning, everyone. It's going to be a great panel. If you are my speaker, if you could put your camera on. If you're not my speaker, Manoj, please kindly put your camera off. And I look forward to having a riveting discussion. Now, let's talk about risk and opportunities shaping the EMEA region in 2025. We're going to be navigating increasingly complex landscape, which is marked by geopolitical shifts, economic trends, and trade wars. And of course, technological advancements. Now, this is very important for businesses and policymakers to remain agile in these changing times and be forward-thinking. Now, while we look at such risks as supply chains, regulatory disruptions, Trump, of course, let's not forget Trump, and security risk. Now, all of these pose challenges, but yet at the same time, it presents opportunities for partnerships, opportunities for growth. Now, I am delighted today we have an esteemed panel of experts from all over the world, and we're going to be really delving into some relevant topics which we're all talking about. I'm going to introduce our panel, and then we're going to jump straight in. So, firstly, we have Mark Nuttall. Thank you, Mark. Welcome. He is globally recognized, an expert in law enforcement, risk management, and anti-money laundering and global security. He has over 25 years of distinguished service in both public and private sector. And that includes, he's worked with law enforcement, he was a detective at New Scotland Yard, and he also worked at Interpol. So welcome, Mark. Next, Dr. Faisal from Saudi Arabia. If you could kindly put your camera on, Dr. Faisal, that would be fantastic. He's an experienced CEO of risk management consulting of ANA Company, while a great background in academia and practical applications. And he was a former head of investigation and development in the Special Military Police Group for Security and Protection in Saudi Arabia. Welcome. Next, from Romania, we have Ciprian Dan Costia. He is the vice chairman of Autonova. Welcome, a leading business group from Romania. He's also board member and chairman of the audit committee of the National Credit Guarantee Fund for Small and Medium Enterprise of Romania. Next, we have Shahadra Bahandre. She is an experienced hand in strategic consulting and intelligence, crisis management and risk analysis for business and corporate and international organizations. She is the founder of Confluence Consultants, and in her last role, she was heading Asia Pacific intelligence team for Barclays. Welcome. And of course, last but not least, Malcolm. In 2022, he is the president of ASIS International, and he's currently the Public Safety Excellence Director for RCU KSA. He has over 25 years international work experience in the public and private domains. He has several senior management positions, and he is a leader and understands defense, law enforcement, oil and gas, banking and finance industry. So welcome, everyone. It's wonderful to have you all here. Now, I'm going to jump straight in. I'm coming to you, Cyprian. Now, I have a very important question for you.
Yes.
Is democracy dead in Romania? What has happened in the last elections? Now, in particular, there was a democratic process. There was the first round. And the current government has dismissed it null and void because of the results. Now, this sends a very worrying messages to other citizens in European countries. Now, I want to get your take on that because it obviously affects inward investment into Romania. What's your thoughts?
I can tell you hi to everybody. I'm very happy to be the speaker which starts this discussion because from my point of view, and you will see during my intervention, I consider the political landscape being the most important in generating risks all over the world during this year. And this is a continuation of last year, because in the last year, in most countries, most of 50% of the population in the world went to elections. This happened in Romania too. In last year, we had all the possible and impossible elections. There were the local elections, it was okay. There were the parliamentary elections, it was okay. There were the European Union Parliament elections, that was okay. Then there were the presidential elections. And the first round of the presidential elections were canceled, were annulled by the government. And this happened because we are talking very much about risks. And we can see the technological risks, the misinformation and disinformation risks, which can influence a lot the people. What happened here in Romania was a mix of manifestation of such risks with a very well documented by the intelligence authorities of possible interference from abroad during the elections through an online social media platform. And this is the reason why the first round of presidential elections were canceled, because actually they do not reflect the reality. Democracy is alive. We will make again the presidential elections in this year in May. But now the authorities will be very careful so that this kind of risks do not manifest themselves during the election process, which is not okay. And this is what happened in Romania. So the democracy is alive, everything is okay. We have, following the parliamentary elections, the new government, which is a government formed through discussions, through democratic process. Transparency was one of the key features for forming this government. And now we are preparing in this year, in May, for the new presidential elections. This is the situation in Romania.
Wonderful.
We are alive, democracy is alive, but sometimes due to the checks and balances that in democracies we have, there happen such difficult decisions like we had in Romania too, and they can appear some kind of dictatorial decisions, but they are not. They are actually based and they are coming from the checks and balances that the democracy is providing to the people.
Thank you, Cyprian. Very, very well said. Now, Mark, I'm going to jump to you. Given your experience with Interpol, you've worked with different regulatory bodies. Now, how do you see law enforcement and regulatory agencies working together? Now, the reason I ask this, if we look at, for example, cryptocurrency, there's no regulatory existing in such sectors, and we need to see greater cross-border collaboration. So what's going to happen in 2025?
Hello there. So yes, happy to be here always for MitCat. I'm one of their greatest supporters, and it's good to see everybody online today. So fantastic news. What does it boil down to? Where do law enforcement sit in all of this? It comes down to money, money, money. There are very few law enforcement entities globally that have large budgets, unlimited budgets. Budgets like I live in Dubai in the UAE. Here's kind of an unlimited budget, whereas in many other countries they rely on the cascading infrastructure from either a central government pot, such as the United Kingdom, or they then rely on donor agencies from other countries coming in and assisting with their infrastructure. USAID was one of those donation agencies globally, and unfortunately now it appears to have been cut off at the helm. So as a result of that, the international infrastructure is having an awakening, and certainly from being in Interpol, as I was for a number of years, there sits projects that are funded via donor agencies. So where those projects are going to go, what's going to happen with the enhanced data sharing, the intelligence exchanges, the capacity building, the capability processes that are in place, I expect will be subject to some immense both internal and external discussions, and maybe some of the other countries that are wealthy picking up the bill rather than the United States, who has been since about 1961, and before that with the Marshall Plan as well. What I feel is going to happen in terms of those regulatory agencies coming to the table, as well as those law enforcement pieces, is that there seems to be a dramatic shift all of a sudden, and I think it's more again out of the United States pot, towards maybe a view of slowing down regulation, and instead of increasing regulation and putting in more and more roadblocks to both business and law enforcement entities, that actually that'll have a little bit of a shake-up, that we'll start seeing some kind of greater common sense across the board in terms of what law enforcement are capable of as the law enforcement pillar, and then what regulatory agencies can and can't do. Because as you've quite rightly stated, there is no yet any international agreement, I will say, rather than legislative protocols country by country, in terms of what digital assets, I'll use that phrase, and look like still, how they are governed, what the processes are for dealing with them. And at the moment, they are seen to be more of a kind of a fiscal, a financial tool and a financial asset than they are per se necessarily a problem case. Because in some countries, they've related them to having greater cyber problems and cyber threats and being utilised in financial crime, and then some bits of geopolitical instability. However, what the majority of the countries see them as is a financial mechanism that could be used for good. So financial enablement in countries, being able to upraise individuals and communities to be able to use something that's not fixed to, say, the US dollar, for example. So here in Dubai, they're being quite innovative how they deal with that. The commodity center, they're going to have a crypto tower there, which is going to be sparkling and immense. And here you've got various regulators across the Emirates, such as Farah, Virtual Assets Regulation Authority, who are there to be able to say, right, we need a balanced approach to this business versus kind of pleasure and finance. In terms of global capability, as I stated at the start of this, it does boil down to true fiat currency, real money, and how these law enforcement entities are funded. And like I say, unfortunately, there is going to be a significant lack of capital in terms of supporting some of the countries, or many of the countries, should I say, that are less well off than those such as, let's say, the UK, the US, etc. So there's going to be a major shift, I do feel, over the next year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. And then we will have some type of stability into the fifth year, from my perspective and some of the conversations that I've had lately.
We definitely do need it. We definitely do need it sooner than later, I hope. Absolutely. So Dr. Faisal, I want to touch on your doctoral research. You did a doctoral on risk management strategies, and it was to deal with unpredictable events. Now, from your research, what key lessons can you advise businesses in the Middle East to enhance their resilience in 2025?
Yeah, thank you for having me, and also with my respect to your respectful guests. I wish you start with old people, because we're waiting like almost two hours, but it's fine. Regarding to your question, I will come back to your question. Most of us know about the Middle East volatility, which is we're living in let's say unique geopolitical situation. And that led me to think about unthinkable. Unpredictable risk or unpredictable events. We should know first what do we mean by unpredictable risk. You know, the unpredictable events or unpredictable risk are arising suddenly and outside the scope of our expectation or normal expectation. If we go back to the quote of former U.S. Secretary of Defense, Rumsfeld, he mentioned something like known unknowns, unknown unknowns, which after that or before of his quote, there is a Taleb mentioned something like black swan theory. And most of the organizations around the world talking about this theory and how we can handle or manage the situation or the type or about this type of events. So the goal not to manage the black swan or unpredictable event. The goal of my study how the organization can observe the shock. It's based on the situation, which is. Let me go back a little bit regarding to unpredictable and the black swan. Black swan little bit above of the unpredictable event because of large scales. Let's say if we talking about corona pandemic 2020. No one expects the world will lock down. It's a few, or if there is any, it's a few people. This is the type of events that we should concentrate when we're dealing with unpredictable. Risk management domain. Many methodology like COSO, ISO 31 can deal with a specific type of risk. However, when we're talking about the unpredictable risk, needs a specific or at least expand or extend our view of the type of this event. If you asked me, I will come back to your question. If you ask me regarding to what is the key to handle this type of events. First, I can say adopt dynamic risk assessment framework, which is very important to identify and analyze potential unpredictable risk. We're not talking about a normal risk. We're talking about unpredictable. So you have to extend your vision regarding to this type of risk. Second, I can say like collectively organizational agility and adaptability. This is very important too. Also, we have to focus on early warning systems. This is very also important. And based on my study, it's unfortunately a few of type of organizations can take care of this type of risk. What I mean by this risk, unpredictable or black swan risk. Also, there is a very important element or factor in order to deal with this type of risks, which is establishing comprehensive business continuity and a crisis management plan. Also, there is important factors fostering a culture of risk awareness and resilience. The culture, when I did this research, no one can talk about the basic risk. How about you're talking about unpredictable or black swan?
And I'm going to come back to you on that. I want to hear from Shadhara. Now, you're a geopolitical expert. Now, what's the top geopolitical risk we expect to see in EMEA in 2025?
Geopolitical. The attention of the situation in the Middle East could be forbidden war, something like this. Targeting the very important infrastructure.
Of course. Shadhara, I'm just going to go to you. What's your thoughts on that?
Thank you so much, Farah. I like a lot of people on the panel. I've been a constant on MidCat panels as well, so it's great to be back. Trump's just come to power and it's been a roller coaster ride. I'm going to try and sum up something which takes experts years. So let me just delve into it. And Farah, please stop me if I'm exceeding the time limit, because this is an area very passionate to my heart. So instead of giving the geopolitical risks, let me just delve down into the methodology, right? So it's better to have the wherewithal than to hear someone say ABC risks. So the way I generally do this, I pick up, not enamored of the man, but Mao Zedong had this theory of nested conflicts, nested warfare, where he would look at 3 levels. So he would start at the local level in China, then the regional war with Japan, and then the global first and second world war. For me, I look at the Middle East very similarly. The global, the regional, and the local converge to produce risks here. And I'll just quickly list the main elements of them. What is global going to be in 2025? It's going to be the US empire strikes back, right? And this we've seen in the last sort of maybe a couple of months, etc. We met with an expert last week, and he said that the US allies in the region have become so used to a tame US leadership that with the second Trump presidency, they're not going to know what hit them. Partially true. But I think the US in this time of 2025 will be defined by the 4 T's: Trump, tech, trade, and tariff, right? So Trump is essentially the aggressive face of the United States that the Middle East will have to face. The tech is the choice that will have to be made between US and China. The trade and tariffs is, of course, his pump, baby, pump policy, which will have massive effects on the hydrocarbon market. And then the tango is essentially the military conflicts of the world, and how the US will play a role in the security conflicts of the world. From a regional level, for years, it's been a tug of war between the Iranians, the Israelis, and the Saudis, the GCC in a way. That rope has given way. Iran has been significantly weakened. They're not out, but they have been weakened. And that sort of led the rope to fall. So what we're seeing in Syria, what we're seeing in Lebanon, possibly Libya, maybe next Iraq, new alignments, new conflict forces, all companies will have to deal with it. There are, of course, trends that can be picked up, but it's a painstaking event. And so your geopolitical intelligence team guys are very, very important. And the last one is the local level. So we're going to be looking at how, conflicts and the alignments in Syria, for example, are going to play out. There's a new government, ex-Al-Qaeda roots, but they're making all the right overtures. They've reached out to the Saudis, they've reached out to the Egyptians. They've even said that they're willing to sort of compromise with the Israelis. And then Lebanon now has a new president. How far will they be able to sort of navigate the regional sort of divergences and local divergences within their countries? One of the things that's diverging here, recently, President Trump announced that he's going to withdraw the US forces from Syria. Now, that means that it'll be very difficult for the Israelis to disengage from either Syria or from Lebanon, creating, credibility sort of issues for the new government. So how that's going to pan out, that's going to be the local aspects that we'll have to look at. And there is a lot of theory around this, that when the international, regional, and local factors collide is when massive changes happen in the Middle East. We've seen it during the Soviet times, we've seen it in Iran, we've seen it in the 90s. I don't think in the last 20 years, such sort of gigantic collaborations of these three factors have happened. Are we going to see a major shift in the Middle East? What is that going to look like? All things point out to Iran at the moment. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was just in the US. A lot of things have come out. What's that going to look like? Is it going to be maximalist pressure? Is that going to be, I don't know, a strategic deal? Because the US envoy to Iran is essentially somebody who does not support attacking Iranian nuclear facilities. Or is it going to be that Iran finally gets the nuclear bomb? All of these are trends that we are looking at very, very closely. But I personally feel that the global, the regional, and the local are colliding to produce very, very specific new alignments in the region that will have to be monitored. So I'm going to stop there, and maybe I can take some of these issues in the questions.
What a brilliant, brilliant response. Very, very enlightening. I really love some of the examples used. Now, Malcolm, you obviously experience in multiple sectors, but I really want you to give us some insight of opportunities and threats in, for example, in defense and oil and gas.
Yeah, so good day, everyone. Many thanks for having me here. I mean, it's a valid question when we look at from a sector perspective, specifically these two sectors and within the region. However, I've seen, the pressing security threats across EMEA is no much, and there's particularly two sectors, is not much different from other regions globally. I mean, the previous panel has shared that with us. Business will encounter a range of security threats, both in cyber and physical security domains, and the oil and gas and government is no different. I think what I then do with this question is, just direct it into, a certain direction when we talk about all these listed threats against the business. The big question normally arises, so what? So what? This list of war, terrorism, crime, cyber, what does it mean to the business? Is it truly going to derail the achievement of our objectives? Yes or no? It's either happening right now, and we know there's wars around us, but that's no longer a risk. It's now an issue because, as the risks say, it is not yet happened. When it has happened, it's an issue, it's a challenge, it's going on now, right now. Or it might be future looking, which may pose a risk, right? But is it relevant to my business? Do I use this rather as a source of intelligence? Or how do I see all of this listed threats? How does it impact? So I think, it's back to the basics to contextualize. And maybe definitions may sound trivial, it may sound minor, but when one think about it, risk, the effect of uncertainty on objective, upside or downside, and it brings that upside or the downside one, and you asked opportunities, right? So when I think about this, there's this old saying that entrepreneurship is a risky endeavor. But actually, it's an opportunity endeavor. So my thinking is then, so opportunity actually comes first. Because the business looks for opportunity first to solve a problem. People need energy. That's a problem. We have to supply that energy. The entrepreneurs see that, I can create this to make the world a better place. Each opportunity. Risk is maybe the one that might derail that opportunity. So that's the reason why they say entrepreneurship is a risky endeavor. But it does not start with risk. A business is not created because of risk. It's the saying of crisis create opportunity. No, there is a need to be fulfilled. It's an opportunity. But as the basic statements say, the effect of uncertainty on your objectives, positive or negative, what does it really mean? So this is where we start asking all of this happening around us, what does it really mean? So I'm going to give you, South Africa, for example, is one of, when you hear about it, is crime. It's a threat out there. Crime is the biggest threat. Now, I go to South Africa, and my objective is to take my family and go have a holiday. That's the objective. We want to have a good time. However, car hijacking and so forth is the potential that can happen on the road of our enjoyment. That is the thing that I am concerned, because it's contextualized. It is me. It is not that crime is all over there. And I can give you examples where I did not get into that situation because I made it relevant and I ensure that family goes out there and have a good time. So what does actually the war in Israel mean to your business, your oil and gas business? What does the opportunity now happens in Syria, the fact that, you know, the war is now over, business is looking for opportunity. So contextualize. So I'm going to pause there. Thank you.
Now, staying on that, actually, Mark, I'm going to come to you because I want to look at beyond threats. What opportunities do you see emerging in risk management? In particular, how can companies gain a competitive advantage in this climate?
Yeah, so I advise on. You asking me, Farah? Or
yes,
Malcolm?
Mark, please.
Good.
Mark.
Sorry, somebody just overspoke. So yeah, absolutely no problem. I discuss this all the time. So I always look at return on investment, and Malcolm was quite right a moment ago. What does it mean to a business? What, you know, why on earth should they care about securitization of X, Y, and Z, or their cyber infrastructure and how that works for their organization? And I always compare it to, right, okay, what we've got to do now is grind down to the fact that this business is currently, I don't know, might be lacking capital injection, or it's not available to go into market because of X technology cannot be implemented because it's from the US or Israel or wherever, and it can't then be implemented within the Middle East or Asia or wherever else. And it's about them understanding from both a security standpoint, but even more so from a security leader being able to convert that discussion through salesmanship to their leadership and the board to get investment from them to be able to facilitate the business itself. So what I've often spoke about to, say, security leaders, so I chair the Security Leaders Summit at Intersec, and what I've spoke to them about previously is, look, if you've got, say, I don't know, a new arbitration over CCTV cameras, why aren't you using them if you're in a consumer business, fast-moving goods or otherwise, so that CCTV can be used to identify at the same time where customers or clients are moving around within the business, so that you can draw out analytics for the business process itself to be able to generate revenue, to be able to put in marketing processes, and more importantly, to be able to understand where the KPIs are for the business so they don't have to expend on further stock at X, Y, Z, and to be able to drive your clients around your store in the same way as they do at multiple airports globally. Some airports haven't yet got that gist that the security framework and security infrastructure can be used to generate revenue. And this is where it comes to the fore for a lot of businesses, is that it's basically turning that security operator whose passion is to drive security in the business to a security leader that can drive both revenue for the business but securitization at the same time. It's gaining experience in business, what a return on investment looks like, and how that is perceived to the overall business environment and its pillars. And I think that that's one of the most important things to bear in mind. And I think Malcolm touched on it many times within his discussion, is that you've got to, as a security operator that is now a security leader, have sympathy and empathy for the business itself, because they are paying your check at the end of the day. And in that, you need to understand that your security models can't be inhibiting to the business. And one of the previous speakers, I think it was a gentleman from the travel security industry, was saying exactly that, is how do we balance this? How do we balance having all these security checks and gateways in place when actually the operator, the person that is out in Sierra Leone, for example, can't actually work when they're sent there because of all these security provisionals. So I'll stop there and I'll let somebody else have some airtime. Thank you.
Brilliant, brilliant. Now, Cyprian, you've got fantastic experience in both public and private sector, especially in financial institutions. Now, how do you see this collaboration going forward with government and businesses evolving to create economic stability across EMEA region?
I would like to start my point of view, presenting my point of view from the fact that in this moment, due to the main risk that I foresee in the next 2-3 years, which I call political disorder, we will have to think very well if politics is following economics, like should be, or the economics is following the politics. And because of the huge uncertainty now in the world, the politics will prevail now, and the economics will follow the politics. But the collaboration will not be a very strong one. This is a result, and I'm coming back to what I said at the beginning, of last year's huge elections. And this political disorder landscape that we will see in the next 2-3 years comes exactly from this situation. New leaders were elected in a lot of countries, and these new leaders provided the people with a lot of non-realistic, non-objective promises during their campaign. In one form or another, they will have to implement at least some of those promises. And because they are, some of them, new in the leadership positions that they gained through elections, they will want to have, like it happens in America too, a very tough position. They will not want to negotiate first, but they will want to take decisions first. And then, of course, they will realize that sometimes they did not calculate it or evaluated the consequences, and they will have to face the negotiation with different parties involved. The same will happen with the financial sector. In the financial sector and economic sector, everything is under one form or another connected to searching the profits, the return on investments, searching a very stable and good business environment. And this will generate in the world a capital movement from different parts of the world to another parts of the world. My estimation is that there will be not very good and very strong and very deep collaboration between private sector and public sector, because now the public sector, due to the new elected leaders, will take just decisions. And during this time, the financial sector and the businesses will start to flow in different areas of the world where they feel that they can have at least safe, if not good, profits. This will generate, from my point of view, in Europe we have huge bureaucracy in Brussels, the capital of European Union. The decision process is very slow. A lot of this very complicated. In Africa, we see a huge fragmentation and a lot of problems. In Middle East, there is quite a lot of instability, but there are also some leaders, some country which can bring like a magnet some capital in that part of the world. But generally speaking, to EMEA region, I estimate that because the financial capital will search stability, they will prefer to go in United States in spite of the beautiful word from the dictionary, which is tariff. It will be a very difficult period in the next years. Anyway, on the long run, it's impossible not to come back to stability. But as I explained to you, for the next 2-3 years, I do not see a very, very clear, stable landscape. I'm rather seeing something like in a desert where during the evening you have a beautiful landscape with the sand, but in the morning everything can be changed, and you can face a lot of winds. This is what will happen globally in EMEA region and in the relation between public and private sector. It's very interesting to have this experience in both sides. People in Europe were expecting more quick decisions from public sector, and the politicians were always looking to make the decisions look good, even though those decisions were not so good. People are fed up with politicians, with promises, and people want, clear decisions. This is why in Europe we are facing the rise of nationalism, and this will also generate a problem in the intersection between the public and the private sector, in spite of searching for stability from the financial institutions' point of view. But the financial institutions will also face the huge developments in the technological area. And because of the very, very large amount of regulations which are in the financial sector, especially in Europe area, I estimate that in the future, the financial sector, if wants a better collaboration with the public sector and with, of course, the final clients, which are the companies, corporations, small, medium enterprises, and largely all the persons, there is needed a dereglementation of the financial sector, including banks, including stock exchanges, including insurance. So this is how I see movements in the future.
Absolutely. Amma, if I could kindly ask you to put your camera off. Thank you very much. Dr. Faisal, are you there?
Yeah, I'm there.
So Dr. Faisal, I'm a big admirer of Saudi Arabia's Vision 2030. It's absolutely phenomenal how much foreign investment it has attracted. And I really would like you to obviously, how do you see emerging opportunities? We've got renewable energy, we've got energy tourism, technology, but how does that compare with geopolitical, regulatory, and cultural risks, in your opinion?
Yeah, first, we know Saudi becomes, or the market in Saudi becomes emerging market. If we're talking about the opportunity, let us mention the Saudi Vision 2030. It's to create a lot of opportunities. Before we're talking about the risk, I would like, if you don't mind, to mention some of these opportunities, which is content of the vision of 2030. The government focusing on renewable energy and green tech. It's the initiative to generate 50% of energy from renewable by 2030, with 100 billion investment in solar, wind, and hydrogen. Also, they're focusing on tourism and entertainment. In fact, there are mega projects. Most of you heard about NEOM, the Red Sea project, Qiddiya. This project targeted above 100 million annual visitors with more than 1 trillion in tourism investment from the government. It's when talking about the mega project, it's really mega project. Also, the third focusing from the government regarding to the vision of 2030, technology and innovation. Invest 6 and 4% billion in tech fund to build AI, which is a big investment from the government. Also built a smart cities. When you look for the fourth one, industrial and logistics expansion. Its national industrial strategy aims to localize 20% of manufacturing and become a global logistics hub via port like Jeddah Islamic Port. Regardless of these risks, like geopolitical instability and regulation and so on, and cultural adoption, you know, Saudi Arabia and the previous was a conservative country and nation. But regardless of these challenges and risks, there are a huge opportunity pushing the visitor to invest in Saudi Arabia. But how the visitor or the multinational companies minimize this risk, how to manage this risk? I highlight strategies to maximize upside and mitigate risks. Very important to localize smartly. As you know, the companies should partner with Saudi firms to navigate Saudization. You know, there is a law to any company come to Saudi Arabia to have a percentage of Saudization to hire from the foreigner company. But in order to manage or to mitigate the risk, you have to. This is options for in order to manage the risk. Partner with Saudi firms. Also, the second, leverage government incentives. If Saudi provide special economic zones offering tax holidays, 100% foreign ownership, and customers exemptions. Also, adopt agile compliance. You know, the government, in order to achieve the vision, they try to manage the situation and the changing always the regulation in order to fit in achieving the goals. So you have to adopt agile compliance. Let's say, as example, track regular changes. There is national information centers updates on Saudization tiers. This is some tips for any foreigner company. If you look for also very important point, embed geopolitical foresights, also invest in social capital. This can help any organization to maximize upside and mitigate risks.
Thank you, Dr. Faiz. That was absolutely excellent. And Shadra, I want to talk to you because obviously you've been leading crisis management teams at Barclays. Now, what's the most common mistakes that companies make when they respond to crisis?
So I'll be very honest, it's been my crisis management career is way in the past, but I will pick out some experiences that are particular to the region, right? Firstly, don't think your teams sitting in London, in Singapore, in Europe will be able to respond to the region's crisis, right? Increasingly, you need to have feet on the ground to understand what's really happening. And it's also very, very important to build those local connections. As Dr. Faisal said, number of opportunities are also rising in the region. The risks have to be mitigated. So you have to, build local teams here who are culturally aware, who are sensitive, who know how things are being done. Secondly, I think it's very, very important to add geopolitical intelligence to your crisis management teams. It shouldn't be reactive. You need to understand the scenarios, create long-term planning, practice your scenarios very, very well. Don't bring in the So I used to be at Barclays Bank, as I said, and it was largely a push model. We would make the teams realize how important geopolitics has become. That's changed. It's been a number of years since I've been out of Barclays, but that's changed. And now companies actively elicit intelligence of this sort, but make it actionable, put it in front of your decision makers. And that's a tip for the geopolitical intelligence teams as well. Unless you have a bottom line attached to it, unless you have a very clear impact, it's not going to be taken seriously, right? Intuitions don't work very well with business. So I routinely work with, investors who are coming to the region, funds who are, so financial services is very big in the UAE, it's big in Saudi, it's starting to grow in Qatar. They want to understand, obviously there's a lot of investable capital in the region, so they're attracted by that, but they're very, very spooked out by the entire volatility crisis, right? So it's very difficult to make them understand geographically that the UAE is here and that the conflict is happening somewhere else, but all of that has to be made very, very actionable. And so that's something that I would tell everybody who's doing both geopolitical intelligence, crisis management, and it's massive opportunities in the region. And if you want to take advantage of that, hyperlocalization, absolutely. Be completely in touch with the local cultural nuances, understand how the risks are evolving, and then make your analysis very bottom line oriented, very corporate in terms of the presentation. And I think the decision makers will act on it.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Now, Malcolm, you obviously in KSA, you're doing a public safety excellence director role. Now, how do you see public safety and the corporate security aligning in 2025?
Yeah, so this structure, is the public safety includes security. So it's basically one organization. But when I look at overall partnerships with, other agencies and even private partners, as we know, the PPP thing that goes around, there's of course huge opportunity for these partners to really get together, have a common goal, and go forward. Like, for example, engage in community policing. There's initiatives that they do together. But I want to, take a step back and discuss what strategies are there really to ensure this partnership is there for the long run, that is built on certain foundations. And I think about it, I think about my recipe that ensured me a 32-year partnership with my wife. And, if I think about it, I already had this, kind of women in my mind, my rose that I'm going to pick. And when I saw that rose, I picked it, and we actually worked on three things. It's trust, needs, and communication. And I apply that even to the partnerships with the organization right now. So if I think about it, I conduct, what the stakeholder analysis and identifying not only the partnerships, meaning government, as well as private partnerships, but identifying the roles within that particular environment. So that I mention role specifically because that role may stay there forever, but the person may change. But I know that role is the important role to build this partnership based on my recipe of trust, needs, and communication, because ultimately, that department also has needs to fulfill. I think about my regulatory partner. That regulatory partner wants to see compliance. That person, but I mean that role in that organization wants to achieve. Me represent the organization want to sometimes have some leniency on this regulatory pathways, or we want to make sure that we're on the same path. So needs are important element, right? But based on trust and communication, of course, further that trust, I've seen relationships with the specific individuals I say individual, but I mean the roles in these organizations, the respective partnerships has gone so far that we can achieve from many things, and not through only formal MOUs and the normal things that we're doing, but because of that recipe of trust, needs, and communication. And hopefully it will also be more than 32 years with them. Thank you.
I love that. I love that. Now, we've only got 2 minutes left. Now, what I would love is 30 seconds from each of you on trade wars, the trade wars which are rising, coming up. Please give us a 30-second take. Cyprian.
Okay, thank you very much. The trade war is already within and near us. It's present in our life. My opinion, as I told you, is that the capital, yes, will flow in US in the next 2 years, because inside US there will be provided more safety and possibility of generating profits. But looking back to EMEA region, my opinion is, and let's not forget history, geography, and let's look for the future too. We can be the balance between the tectonic plates that represent the US and China and Asia generally. We can be the middle point of intersection for mitigating the global risks. And I think it will happen in the future. In spite of the huge differences in the EMEA region, Europe will represent the strength of economy, Middle East will represent the wisdom of decision, and Africa will represent the beauty of the future. Thank you.
Beautiful. I love that. It was poetry. Mark, please, 30 seconds.
Come to the Middle East, ladies and gentlemen. 1.7 trillion asset under management in Abu Dhabi at the moment. I counteract Cyprian's points a little bit in that I feel that this is the safer region, actually. That businesses are drawn here, that capital executes out of here, that corporate entities actually want to be here within this region, and the securitization piece that you get in this region is like no other. I feel far safer in this region than I would in Louisiana in the US, for example. So come to the Middle East, come and do business and feel safe and secure, and especially with companies like MidCat and others around with their data surface system. Fantastic. Thank you.
Wonderful. And Shadhara, 30 seconds, please.
Okay. So there are 4 stories in the Middle East. Of course, we know about the Israeli expansion, Iranian weakening, Turkey, but there is an economic story coming out, especially about the GCC, right? It's a place where America first fits in beautifully with the regional ambitions, notwithstanding inherent tensions with President Trump's agenda. US companies, especially in tech, investing big time in Saudi Arabia, in UAE, G42, one of the biggest AI companies in the world, Microsoft's investment, Project Transcendence, AI, Google in Saudi Arabia, financial services, there are a lot of opportunities. We'll have to see how this Trumpian whip cracks in the region, and how going forward the companies will choose between China and the US. That's going to be one of the major risks here, but plenty of opportunities. And I am a fangirl, so unapologetically, I like being in the UAE.
Thank you. Thank you. And Dr. Faisal, 30 seconds on your take on trade wars.
Yeah, to win the trade war, just in short paragraph or sentence, come to Saudi Arabia.
I love that. That is so well said. Come to Saudi Arabia. Yalla, let's go. Malcolm, please, 30 seconds.
Yes, so I think when I look at Trump's agenda, how he describes Africa and how he's going to withdraw, for example, South Africa and that trade kind of things, it brings me back to my last conversation is how do you then establish that trust? How do you really balance out your common needs and communicate through and find a solution to then have trade that is beneficial to all?
Wonderful. Now, just quick synopsis here. So we've got Mark said security models need to have sympathy and empathy for business. Dr. Faisal said, and I love this, adopt risk dynamic framework, extend your vision. Beautifully. And Cyprian, democracy is very much alive. Yes, that's great to know. Fantastic. Shadhara, tug of war, the rope has given way. I really love that. And Malcolm, back to basics. Entrepreneurship is an opportunity end of hour. Thank you very much. I could listen to you all day, but unfortunately, our time has come to an end. And I thank you so much for your incredible insight. Thank you.